Good morning. My name is Ed. How's the sound? Good. So nice to be here at Green Gulch on a foggy but soon to be sunny day, I think. Isn't that typical the way it goes? I want to thank Timo for inviting me to speak. And it's so nice to see some of my old friends here. And just out of curiosity, how many of you are here for the first time? Well, special welcome to you. Hope you enjoy your time in this beautiful valley. We're so fortunate to have obtained this as a place of practice so many years ago. And I also, just as I was walking here, thought about some appreciation for the residents and staff here who take care of this magnificent place. It's enormous. And it takes a lot of work to take care of it. And so a special thank you to you. And I want to also welcome everybody that's online. I see you out there, I think, in a blinking green light, or at least a solid green light. Before I begin the subject of my talk this morning, as I sit here with this beautiful Zhaozhou statue, I would like to take a moment to invoke her. Zhaozhou is the Bodhisattva. Zhaozhou Bodhisattva is the guardian of children and travelers. Zhaozhou's vow is to remain present for all beings in all realms of existence, and that is our vow. Zhaozhou holds in her hand a wish-fulfilling jewel. It represents our wishes for the ease of all suffering of all beings. In particular, this morning, I wish for an ease of the suffering for those who are involved in wars, suffering from disease or social injustice, and all other beings who are suffering for the consequences of global warming. Thank you very much. A few months ago, I was at Tassajara for a Sangha week. And I was inspired, as I always am at Tassajara, by the power of the mountains and the sounds of the stream. How many of you been to Tassajara? Well, quite a few. I hope at some point in time, the rest of you can go. It's a long trip, but it's worth it. It's a very unique setting to have a Buddhist temple. Suzuki Roshi actually danced down the road after we found the place in 1966. And Green Gulch is beautiful too. It has the same power of the mountains. And of course, in addition, you have the ocean. And many times in the morning, you can hear the ocean while you're sitting zazen here. At least I could. Or maybe depending on what kind of state I was in, I imagined I could. Really. It's hard to tell the difference at some point in time. I'm reminded of this poem by Sudong Poem. It is said that he sat zazen all night long, and in the morning he wrote this poem and gave it to the abbot at the Donlin Monastery. The sounds of the stream are the teachings, the broad, long tongue of the Buddha. The colors of the mountains are nothing but the pure body of Buddha. All night long I hear 84,000 verses. Tomorrow, how can I tell them to others? Beautiful 4-line poem. With the advent of Mahayana Buddhism, Buddha is no longer a historical person who discovered the root of human suffering and developed a teaching method so that others could be freed from suffering. Buddha transformed to represent the eternal principle of the essential, ineffable nature of reality. So mountains and streams are expressing the essential nature of reality and are constantly expounding the teachings. I brought this poem to my Vimala Sangha group on Friday, and so many people related to the powerful feeling they have when they open themselves up in walking in nature. How many of you love nature in that way? Yeah, it's And nature has everything in it. There's trees that die and all kinds of things that are going on, but it feels so accessible in some ways. At Tassaro, I lived there for 4 years when I was young. And on days off, I would walk up the stream and I would just sit by the stream and watch the movement of streams. The mountains are so still and the stream is moving. And that combination of stillness and movement kind of reminds me of Zazen. We sit still, and because of that stillness, we can really feel the movement of our life, the impermanence of life as it moves through us. I remember one day I was sitting at Tassara and I just really felt like the sounds of the stream were just pouring over me like I was a boulder in the stream itself, part of the stream. So in the mountains, one feels the world around you as sacred. Its appearance is miraculous, as is yours. This poem inspired Dogen's Mountain and River Sutra, Dogen, the founder of our Soto Zen lineage. And the first line goes, "These mountains and waters of the present are the expression of the old Buddhas." These mountains and rivers of the present are the expression of the old Buddhas. We think of every teacher that brought the teaching to us from Shakyamuni down. They're all old Buddhas. And those teachings are being expressed by the mountains and rivers of the present. Present is an important word in the sentence. Dogen is saying mountains and waters express the fundamental truth of existence, each moment. But he says more in the sutra than that. He's saying everything in the present moment is expressing the fundamental truth. You, your crazy thoughts, your aching body, your wonderful and wild emotional life, all of that is expressing a fundamental truth of existence. Zhaozhou used to say, to practice is to open yourself up to everything you see as an embodiment of the truth. To open yourself up to everything you see as an embodiment of the truth. This is why we practice Zazen, why everyone can join our practice, and why practice includes every activity of our life. We often say that, we try to see Buddha in everyone, to see Buddha in oneself. Of course, this is not an easy thing to say, not such an easy thing to do, especially when we're feeling pain and suffering. And 2 weeks ago when I was at Tassara for another event, Charlie Pokorny, an old student here at Gulch, and his wife, Sarah Emerson, were there and they gave a lecture, and Charlie said he was emphasizing welcoming and friendliness. So I have this pain in my back, I'm gonna welcome it and be friendly to it. Sure, that's good. And when we sit a lot of Zazen, of course, we have pains in our back. And we go, oh yeah, no, I wish it would go away. Or why doesn't that person ring the bell and end this period? I think they've fallen asleep. No, I think they don't like me and they're just forgetting. Anyway, so no, welcome pain in my back, friendly pain in my back. And of course, we have a saying, if you enter into the pain and you become one with the pain and you really accept it, then just the being present with it frees you of it. You've heard that, right? Yeah. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. And Charlie in this talk said, and we should welcome and be friendly with this difficulty. Sometimes it's an intellectual difficulty, an emotional difficulty, an interpersonal difficulty. We should welcome it and just say, we're just gonna keep welcoming it and be friendly with it forever. Because the forever part is key. If we say, well, I'm going to welcome it for 30 seconds. And if it doesn't go away, then I'm going to keep being angry at it. No, forever. And we all sort of say, yeah, forever. Sure, Charlie. Yeah. And when it was Sarah's turn to speak, they were trading off in this talk. She says, I just want to bring up that forever thing again, just so you heard it. The sense that, of course, it won't be for forever. Everything changes, but that kind of level of accepting difficulty gives you the ground upon which you can know what to do. You can move from the actual place where your life exists. And just another comment from Suzuki Roshi that I came across. Sharing the feeling right here, right now is the fundamental or basic thing for Zen practice. Sharing the feeling right here. Zen is, in a word, to share our feelings with people, with trees and mountains, wherever we are. That is Zen practice. When we can really appreciate the feeling of the woods, that is Zazen. Suzuki Zen was a very warm-hearted Zen. He used to say, feel warm in your Zazen. There's a kind of kindness to yourself when you feel some warmth towards yourself. So there's a lot to say about to practice is to open yourself to everything you see as an embodiment of truth, and why practice includes every activity of your life. And I think what I'm going to come at it by going, and I'm not sure, we'll try this connection through one of my favorite poems, koans actually. It's from The Gateless Barrier, it's case 37, or the Book of Serenity, case 47. I'm in a kind of nature mode, so this is a poem about trees, a koan about trees. So this is the koan, Zhaozhou, a very well-known Zen master, and it's titled "The Cypress Tree in the Courtyard." In several of the commentaries, it's called the oak tree in the courtyard. And then in other ones, it's called the cypress tree in the courtyard. I actually looked it up, and it's because the two characters in Japanese mean oak and in Chinese mean cypress. So I had to choose. And on the one hand, I love all the California live oaks we have here. So I'm leaning towards oaks, feeling close to me. On the other hand, I think it must have been 15 years ago, we went to China and we stayed in Zhaozhou's temple, the Zhaozhou of this koan. And massively large place with these beautiful plazas. And in the plazas are all these magnificent old cypress trees. And in fact, the name of Zhaozhou's temple is called Bailin Temple, which means Cypress Woods Temple. So I thought, well, we really have to choose cypress for this. Plus, the redwoods are in the cypress family, right? And they're right next door to us here across the way. So here's the case, now that I've given you an introduction a little bit. The monk asked Zhaozhou, what is the meaning of Bodhidharmas coming from the West? And Zhaozhou said, the cypress tree in the courtyard. And there's some verses and commentary, but I think I'll skip them and we'll go to that later. I'll just read the verse quickly so you get a little bit of the hang of what's going on here. This is a verse commentary. Words do not convey the fact. Language is not an expedient. Attached to words, your life is lost. Blocked by phrases, you are bewildered. So we'll address that later. So here's the setting, as I imagine it. I always like to think. So I was at that plaza, and I can imagine Zhaozhou was off there. Maybe he was walking between events, or maybe he had finished giving a lecture and was standing out by a cypress tree, and this monk comes up to him. And there's the great master. Maybe the monk sees an opportunity to ask a question burning in his heart. And what does he come up with? What is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West? A little complicated, right? This is a metaphorical saying. I mean, the translation of that usually in these koans is, what is the living meaning of Zen? What's the essence of Zen? That's what he wants to ask the master, but he asks it in this complicated way because Zen koans like to be complicated, just to avoid, getting too much like you understand what's going on. Or maybe he was reaching back to Bodhidharma, the founder of Zen. And Bodhidharma traveled in this long journey from India to China. He sat 9 years in a cave and had this famous teaching, which is the teaching outside the scriptures, pointing directly to the mind. So maybe he was kind of bringing that up, saying, is that the essence of Zen here? What can you say about that? And Zhaozhou says, a cypress tree in the courtyard, as if to say, you don't have to reach back so far. We're just here. Let's get more straightforward. So what's he talking about, the cypress tree? Trees are great teachers. When I was down at Tassara 2 weeks ago, I was particularly appreciative of the sycamore trees at Tassara. Those are these large, they're in the plane tree family, quite large, and they have these beautiful big leaves, and it was 104 degrees down there. So you really appreciated the shade of these lovely trees, and they're throughout the whole valley. They're native to California, and they have these beautiful sort of gray-white barks. We see them all around here in the Bay Area too, and I just love those trees. And I assume many of you have practiced with trees. I hope you have. If you haven't, do it. Take a tree that you feel close to. I have an oak tree outside my house, and just look at it, watch it, see how it changes with the light of the day. Trees always adjusting to find, growing to work with the other trees around them. Really wonderful things. Those plane trees are down at Tassara are so beautiful because when they drop their leaves in the fall, they just completely blanket the ground. And then when they're all gone, you look up and see the stars through those twisted branches. Quite a wonderful canopy. So we would say, pay attention to the being of trees. Become one with the tree. This is maybe this is what this koan's about. Anyway, in Wuman's commentary, that was the end of the story. But of course, these things always carry on. And so there was an additional add-on to this story, which goes the following. So the monk continued the dialogue. The monk asked Zhaozhou, what is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the west? And Zhaozhou said, the cypress tree in the courtyard. And the monk said, please don't teach me with reference to outside things. You saw he had some sense of this from Bodhidharma's. It's in the mind. Why are you talking about trees? I want to know what's going. My mind is causing me all my troubles here. He's asking about an inner truth. And Zhaozhou says, I don't teach you with reference to outside things. Okay, and the monk says, well, what's the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the west then? Give me the goods. And Zhaozhou says, the cypress tree in the courtyard. So, we do have to admire this monk. He's not giving up. He's got this great Zen teacher there, and he's going after him, and is he making progress or not? So he's challenging Zhaozhou. And Zhaozhou he studied for 40 years with his teacher, and then he went on pilgrimage for 20 years, and he didn't establish his monastery till he was 80. And they claim he taught there till he was 120. So he was like, the real thing. So I do admire this monk. So what's the issue that's being brought up here now? He's not referring to something outside, an object. He's not referring to a subject inside. We're referring to life. One of the essential truths of our practice is we are seeking a personal, visceral encounter with one's life. We want to actually meet our life, become ourselves. And we're not bound by scriptures or doctrine. We are seeking this connection. Life is life. Experience is experience. Our experiences are always limited because we can only see as far as our eye can reach. At the same time, while limited, it is always complete. Whatever we need is right there, right here in front of us, within the limitations of our world, if only we know how to receive it. There are no objects to be understood, no subjects to understand. There is just experience. What is it? In a moment of lived experience, essential wonder is preserved. Awakened experience is immediate, intimate experience. There is just what arises. This kind of connection is the basis of our ordinary everyday lives. When we have a real taste of this, and we get this often in Zazen, our life is based on a real foundation. Suzuki Roshi emphasized having a direct experience of things, the direct experience. By making that a practice, it becomes an experiential basis for our living and our responding. Of course, that wasn't enough for our monk. He continued. So he goes, he's back to it again, the basic question, which he's not given up on. Has the cypress tree Buddha nature? Zhaozhou, but it's different. Has the cypress tree Buddha nature? I mean, we've been exploring what's the being of a tree. Does the cypress tree have Buddha nature? Good question. No, any of you that have been communing with cypress trees have an answer to that? What do you think the answer is? Right on the mark. It's exactly what Zhaozhou says. Yes, it does. Then the monk said, when does a cypress tree attain Buddhahood? And Zhaozhou says, wait until the great universe collapses. The monk said, when does the universe collapse? And Zhaozhou said, wait until the cypress tree attains Buddhahood. You can see how helpful Zhaozhou is along the way here. So by this point, we're starting to get the picture that, we're not talking about cypress trees anymore. The monk is saying, do I have Buddha nature? That's his real question. That was his real question right from the beginning. And when can I awaken? How do I awaken to my nature? That's what he's asking. So Zhaozhou's nice. He says, yes, you do. And I really love this because it reminded me of when I was young. I was 25. I was working on my PhD in mathematics, and the whole turmoil of the counterculture erupted and turned everything over in my life. And in my confusion, I decided to rush off to California in search of the truth. And thankfully, somebody had given me a copy of 3 Pillars of Zen, and I'd heard about this Zen master, Suzuki Roshi, in this place called Tassajara. So I bought myself a VW van, and I drove to California, climbed into the Big Sur Mountains, and drove into Tassajara in hope to see maybe what was going on there, maybe take a swim, look around a little bit. But anyway, because they have, you could go to the hot baths and swim if you paid $3 for the day. But anyway, I didn't do that. I went to the front desk and I said, I read a book on Zen and have some interest in it. And the guy behind the front desk looked at me and said, oh, we have a program here. If you'd like to stay for a week, you'll learn more about Zen in a week than if you read all the books about it in English. Do you want to do that? I was in. Anyway, I met Suzuki Roshi that summer and heard him lecture and spent some time with him. And really, when I got back to graduate school, I was convinced that I'd seen something that was really important. That was maybe the most important thing. Maybe that was the answer to what I was searching for, what my meaning in my life might be. But another part of me was said, but you're so screwed up, Ed. There's no way this is possible even for you. So this question developed in me, whether could I do it? Is this something, could I be awakened? So I jumped on the train and went out to City Center, where fortunately Suzuki Roshi was in residence at that time, and I checked in as a student, and I had this burning question, and I went to his assistant and said, I have to talk to Suzuki Roshi. I met him last summer. I had this big question. She says, well, Suzuki Roshi's too busy. Maybe write him a letter. That was not cutting it for me. Writing him a letter. Are you kidding me? I was not very happy. But anyway, as things might be, and I'm not going to tell this whole story, I was doing some cleaning up, sanding a table in the back room, and Suzuki Roshi came in, escorted by his assistant, to observe the work that was being done. The phone rang, and I had a moment with Suzuki Roshi where I could ask my question. The question this monk was asking: is this available to me? Is this Buddha nature, this awakening, available to me? So I will say I got my answer from Suzuki Roshi, not in a spoken word, but I got it. And it was an answer and a question that existed for me for many years. So I do think that this monk got that same answer. He got an answer, and I'm going to expand on this collapsing the universe, but I think in a moment he met Zhaozhou. And that is what Zen practice is about. That is the essence of what Zen is about, is to meet another person, to stand in your own life as it actually is, and meet another person standing in their own life as it actually is. And in that meeting, that connection, that's when Zen comes alive. So that was the opening. What is the meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West? Meaning of Bodhidharma coming from the West, the essence of that is for us, all of you and us together, to meet each other. Whole person, the whole person. So since I have just a few more minutes, I will expand on the collapsing universe. Koans are so dramatic, aren't they? Collapsing universes. I mean, really, so we spend our lives trying to prop up the universe. What's the universe? The universe in our head. The world we've built in our head. We started when we were a small child, and we built a universe, what the world's about, who we are, what we're about. It's filled with all kinds of pathogenic beliefs about what we can and can't do that cause us suffering. This whole world is in our mind and restricts us. So the answer is we just let it crumble and we're free, right? Just let it collapse. This whole structure that's binding us in our mind, we let it just crumble. But of course, that's not so easy. It's an easy thing to say in a beautiful little koan like this, but maybe it's more like Uchiyama would say, opening the hand of thought, relaxing the grip your thinking has on you. Give yourself a little bit of space in your life. We also use the term letting go. It's so easy. We go through life and an event happens and we get attached to it. We want more of that. But we're not getting more of that. So now we're unhappy, or an event happens and we don't like it. We want to get rid of it. Why did this person treat me so badly? All this stuff that's going on through our head, which is interfering with our capacity to be present in this moment and meet the moment and see the truth, the real truth that exists in this moment, outside of this mental world you've created with your thinking mind. So now we finally get to the verse that I read earlier. This is the verse which explores this a little bit, or kind of makes fun of it in certain ways. Words do not convey the fact. This is Robert Aiken's kind of summary of that. That is true, isn't it? In the pungent English proverb, fine words butter no parsnips, the word butter is neither smooth nor salty, right? You know, that toast tastes good. Well, those words don't taste good, but the toast may if you actually experience the toast. So words don't convey the same thing that the actual experience of eating the parsnips with butter on it do. Attached to words, your life is lost. Yes, words are the keys which program most people. Such people are used by words instead of using words. Their understanding is not experiential, but merely verbal. Instead of coming from the life and using words, they act on the basis of concepts which can destroy life. It's a quote from Robert Aiken on his comment on the second line. And of course, I loved his comment on the fourth line. Blocked by phrases, you are bewildered. Blocked by phrases, you are bewildered. That is not altogether bad. How else can one practice? The oak tree in the courtyard, bewildered by that, you have a great chance. And of course, that's what koans really are. You know, I talked a lot about this koan, said various things about it, but really, you know, if the next time you see a tree, you're bewildered by it, or you walk by a stream and you're bewildered by it, when the wonder of life is there, you know, it's not the answer, it's the question. The question is what our practice is about. So I hope this koan brought some questions into your mind as we discussed it. And I think is it that time where we have a few questions?
Yeah. Pass the mic around so that people are here.
Great.
Raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic. So I'm addicted to nature. It's my therapy and my church. And I go into the mountain at least once a week. And I really like hiking alone because I see more and I hear more. And so I go all the time and I notice how the trees change. And instead of keeping a book of gratitude, I keep the book of awe because
Beautiful.
of what I see, because their change is often very slow. And when you get to see the tree be alive and then they die and their neighboring trees are dying because of global warming. And then after that death, you see what do you call those birds? Woodpeckers, whole colony of woodpeckers are working at these trees for like a year and a half, 2 years, breaking it down. And then when you go back again, a year or two, or probably less than that, you'll see mushrooms. And so you see all this awe. It's just absolutely beautiful.
Well, thank you for that beautiful story. I have that same experience. You know, I've been associated with Tassar since 1970, and there's been many forest fires that have gone through that region and wipe out things, and then you see life come back, you know, so vibrantly. It's beautiful. Well, you and I are kindred spirits. I spent 2 summers hiking by myself. I would drive to some place and take off with a pack by myself. And in canyon lands, I remember I didn't see anybody for a week. You just completely alone. And there's a kind of, well, that was my version of searching until I realized I could sit with friends and practice and have that same kind of quality of stillness and awakeness, and also have friends, which is very helpful. Sugurshi used to say the shortcut to awakening is group practice. So after wandering for 6 months by myself, climbing mountains and exploring canyons, I settled at Tassar for 4 years. But I really think that's great. Continue it.
Another person.
Good morning, and thank you for wonderful talk. I particularly enjoyed your talk about the mountain being constant and the stream flowing and so forth. And I come here once in a blue moon and I always enjoy the experience, but how do you explain the disconnect between what we're talking about here on a beautiful Sunday morning and the real life that awaits us once we leave this place? The rush, the stress, the work, all the issues out there. How does one reconcile?
Yes,
Or
well,
do we?
well, we have to, that's the world we live in. I always think of, in the morning we sit zazen and we encounter that stability, that stillness, and then we get up and we face our busy lives. There's a marvelous koan about the one who's not busy. Monk comes by and notices his fellow monk is sweeping the pathway and says, "Too busy." And the monk says, "Don't you see the one who's not busy?" And then the dialogue continues on, which I won't go to, but is there one that can be not busy in the midst of all the busyness? There is one inside you that is not busy, if you can be in touch with it. And our practice is to develop the composure to be in the midst of all of that chaos and craziness and have enough stability to make a contribution. You have to decide what kind of contribution you made. I mean, I was 69 and I was asked to be abbot, and I decided to be abbot for 10 years. And there was a lot that went on in being abbot of this place for 10 years. But you can, with practice, develop a capacity to have the one who's not busy in you. Give yourself some composure. Our practice doesn't stop at the cushion or doesn't stop here in this valley. It continues always with you. Did that answer your question or give you something?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's lovely to hear the story of you traveling on with your van and, turning from the PhD program, which I think there were probably lots of expectations from you. And
Lots of expectations
lot of
by my
bravery.
father.
Yeah.
For sure.
Took a lot of bravery to do that. There were 2 things that you said that I wanted to hear a little bit more on, if you don't mind, please.
Sure.
The first is feeling forever. Do you remember when you said that?
Oh, yes. Right.
And I guess I guess it was in the context of holding someone's wherever they might be, feeling that might be forever. I can't remember it, but I was very intrigued by that. And then the second thing, please, is my question around this is seeing everything as the embodiment of truth. Yet there is often an invitation to make a distinction between the truth of our Buddha nature and the thoughts that come in as not truth. So I was wondering about those two things.
Two very good questions. Thank you for them. So what I was talking about in terms of the forever was this teaching from Charlie about friendliness and welcoming. And what I was talking about in particular, if you have some, to make it real simple, a pain in your body while you're sitting Zazen, instead of saying, push that away, or I'll adjust my posture and get rid of it, but you still can't get rid of it, to welcome it and say, why is this pain here? Welcome it because it's a fact of what's going on. And this is also true for emotional pains or various things. And be friendly with it. That is, we call, accepting life as it is, things just as it is. This is a famous saying, so what's this way of warmly welcoming it in? And one of the things that you'll notice if you practice this for a while is you say, well, I'll do it for a while and maybe it'll go away, or, by doing it, by getting in touch with it. And sometimes it's true, you can pay attention to a pain in your knee, and if you put your energy into it, it just becomes a warm sensation and kind of the pain part goes away. There's things like that. But his sense was, but you have to enter that practice with a feeling that you're willing to be with it forever. Because that's the only way that you'll actually fundamentally accept it. Be with it. It doesn't mean that you don't change. I mean, if it's really painful, you can adjust your posture, or if it's hot outside, you go sit under a tree or something. But the ability to stay with your suffering is a fundamental practice in Zen. And he's emphasizing, be willing to, because your suffering is such a big part of life. And the ability to tolerate, have patience, and courage in the face of suffering is a good practice. There was someone said in a session, Sukroshi said, what you're feeling now will, and everybody was thinking, because they were his third day of session, a lot of pain, will go away soon. Will be with you for the rest of your life. There is this sort of fact that fundamentally suffering and how we manage suffering, which is an element. We lose dear friends, things are happening. So that's, and what was I've gotten into the first one. What was the second one?
The second one was around the embodiment of truth. Seeing everything as the embodiment of truth. And I was curious about
That and your crazy mind that's going on.
Just making that distinction.
So that, we always, there was a lot more in this koan about how our thinking mind causes suffering for us, which is a fact. But in this moment, that's all there is. That thought that's in your mind didn't just arbitrarily, and maybe it did, but probably didn't, probably came from something way back when, in this moment, there really is nothing else. Both things are true, nothing else but your form, your body, your emotions, your thinking. And we would say in Zen, and something else that's ineffable. We call it Buddha nature. Something bigger than you can know about that's going on, that you don't have access to. And remembering that bigger part in the midst of the other thing is what gives one some sense of composure and joy in life, even with real difficulty.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So to add on to what you said and what you respond about change and pain,
Mm-hmm.
and one thing that I've learned for myself is to be very tender with myself, be very loving. And that really helps. And just accept this too shall change and it has its own life,
Mm-hmm.
and just be with it.
Good advice.
Thank you for your great teaching. I wanted, since you've been meditating for over 50 years now and teaching for so long, what is your best recommendation for the new teachers?
What is my best what?
Recommendation for new teachers.
Recommendation for new teachers, same. Are you a new teacher? Oh, good, good. Well, do it. That's my recommendation. Take the chance. When I was in graduate school, I taught calculus because that's how most universities ran. The graduate students taught the calculus courses, and I loved teaching. And I do love teaching. I think teaching is one of the wonderful things, to be able to share something you love and inspire somebody else in that way. So I would recommend try it. Now, it takes courage, that's for sure. It's pretty scary, first time you get in front of the class. Pretty scary the 50th time you get in front of the class. Pretty scary always, actually. Sure. Hi, online.
Thank you. Terry asks, how does one who devotes her life to writing understand these warnings about words?
One of my favorite teachers in our tradition, Norman Fisher, who expounds at great length about the problems with words, cannot stop writing. The man produces a book every month, as far as I can tell. There's a book of poetry, a book of essays, a book of this and that. So yes, if you're an artist and if you're a writer, of course you're writing, but I think the emphasis in this koan is, simple things. Like you do something and all of a sudden you're criticizing yourself all the time. You're criticizing yourself. You're telling yourself what a stupid person you were and what a stupid thing you did. I don't think this is an uncommon experience, right? Those words are actually causing you suffering. And those come usually from a way back storyline that you keep replaying in different versions. So there's all kinds of ways in which our thinking mind, which is just doing stuff all the time, is causing us suffering. So I would make the distinction between those kind of words and brilliant poetic expressions that are awakening and enlivening and enriching other people's lives through your writings. That would be one distinction I'd make.
I have a question, as you were talking about the words,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of reminded me of self, no self. Do you see similarities there? And can you say something in that area?
Say more about what it reminded you of, Kiko.
Well, we have to use words. We have to understand ourselves. We have to have a good sense of ourself before we can practice no self, is what I feel.
Mhm.
And so when you say, will you use those words to create brilliant poetry, but maybe not believe those words in the critical mind, somehow just related to self,
Mhm.
no self for me there.
Well, there's a great lecture, I think it's in Not Always So or Zen Mind, where Shikoshi's making this distinction between, let's say, a psychological analysis of your personality, which given that we're in the Bay Area, probably most of you have done that anyway. So you have, certainly I have. So you have somebody give you a psychological analysis of your personality and what ways you can overcome your things that are causing you suffering and do better. And that can be useful. It's a kind of conceptual framework which moves you forward. And actually, we have conceptual frameworks in Zen also. Tsukuyoshi calls these ladders. So sometimes you need a ladder to carry to get you up somewhere, but you can't get too attached to your ladders or because you need to use your ladder to get to the next place and then put that ladder down because you're going to need another ladder at some other point in time. So yes, we're always constructing a framework of the world and ourself, which helps us get through the world. And we do need to figure out how to drive cars and buy food with different kind of cards now, or no cards, or whatever it is that you're buying. Just look at the machine and it takes your money, whatever. So it takes a lot of thinking to function in this world. That is true, but you don't want to forget the direct experience that you have. And just to add on to what you're saying, self, no self, the most sort of useful way I think about it is just notice how selfish you are. I am, we are human beings. There's so much of your thinking involves, it's me. I'm not getting enough. Somebody just, dished me, whatever. To drop some of that selfishness is to start to be in the no self realm and to think about what you can do for others, and that will make you a happier life. I wandered around, but I appreciate your question.
Coming back.
Well, what a pleasure to be able to spend some time with you in this beautiful setting. I hope you all are well and enjoy the rest of your day and time.